And hello everybody, my name is NikoTheLegend, also known as the Well-Mannered Teenager, the Snowflake, and the Rambling Idiot, and don't forget the newly added Vigil. These nicknames are getting really long and one is nicer than the other four or three. Hi, welcome guys, this is the NikoTheLegend channel. Today we have a big update to talk to you about that, yes, involves Mass Effect Legendary Edition. That's right. This is a big one. A very important big one. Especially if you care about all the little minute details about these visual improvements. And before we get started, folks, hi, NikoTheLegend, how are you? If you like what you see today, feel free to subscribe to the NikoTheLegend channel. I'm everywhere. All the links will be down below. Thank you very much. Now, there is a long stream of this if you want a more deep dive of this article. I've already gone over this. It's a 2-hour stream, a lot of fun, had a great turnout. So I appreciate that if you guys want to check that out. Or if you made it to this one, this is the more summarized and easier version. It's great. Really great. And yeah. So, Mass Effect Legendary Edition, Bioware last week released an article talking all about the gameplay, combat changes, and enhancements. And that was pretty much the part 1 that we did. Now this is pretty much part 2. The visual improvements, graphical updates, changes, and additions for the Mass Effect Legendary Edition. So this is definitely the second step. Now, what I'm about to tell you guys is very important, very detailed, and it might confuse you because there's a lot of wordplay at play. So with that said, guys, I'm going to do what I normally do, especially when it comes to important information such as this that's being portrayed on the screen for you, is to read from the article from top to bottom, okay? Because there is a lot of stuff to go over with. Now, I won't be able to explain every little thing that we talk about in this article, but it will do justice enough for you guys. And if you have any comments, you leave them down below, and I'll try to answer them my best. If not, I'm sure there's somebody else that can do it. But here at the NikoTheLegend channel, we at least try to get the information to you guys first and foremost here as best as I can. So like I said, pay close attention. This is a very important video, and I hope you do enjoy. Welcome back, everyone! The art of Mass Effect supports and builds a universe in which rich stories and characters can be fully realized. It may sound somewhat counterintuitive, but as artists, especially on this remaster, we want players to be able to experience the trilogy again, or for the first time, without being distracted by the art. Our goal from the onset was to improve and enhance the visuals while staying true to the original aesthetics of the trilogy that have become so iconic and genre-defining over the past decade. A remaster rather than a remake allowed us to build upon the original assets in a way that resembles the polishing phase in a normal development cycle, while also being able to utilize the advantages of much more modern hardware and software. Within this blog, we give you an in-depth look at our remastering process with a specific focus on key changes and improvements made to the visuals. Here's what's included: building the foundation, modernization efforts, and rebuilding worlds. For those interested in the technical aspects of game development, it's probably no surprise to hear that changing almost any asset or system can and will break something else. When a game is in its final state, it generally resembles a house of cards. The simple process of blowing the dust off, let alone implementing foundational changes like updating the version of the engine, will undoubtedly cause unexpected issues. Remastering a single game is a deceivingly complex process, so creating a proper plan for how best to mitigate risk while reopening 3 games to full development was foremost on our minds. We took a 3-phased approach to remastering the trilogy. Phase 1, building the foundation. We started Phase 1 by identifying and cataloging every asset in the trilogy. How many particle effects, 3D models, textures, levels, GUI, graphical user interface, elements, sounds, cinematic movies, etc. actually exist across the trilogy, and on average, what are their quality levels? Do the source assets content creation files still exist? What percentage of those assets should we improve, and on average, how long will each asset type take to improve? Knowing the sheer numbers of assets and their quality levels shaped our strategy for improving each type of asset. The original trilogy was released entirely on a console cycle that allowed up to 1080p resolution, but was often actually running at 720p or lower. Now the remaster is releasing on hardware that allows 4K resolutions, so the answer for how many textures we wanted to improve was easy. Every single one of them. For the trilogy, this is well over 30,000 individual textures. First, we increased the engine limits on texture sizes, so any textures that were authored larger than could be on disk could now use their full resolutions. We then wrote some batch processes that worked along with an AI upres program to increase the original uncompressed textures to 4 times their originally authored sizes. Our batch tools made special considerations to maintain the validity of special texture types, like normal maps or masks, to ensure colors don't contaminate each other. At this time, we also incorporate some more modern texture compression techniques that would allow those textures to hold onto more of their quality on disk. Meanwhile, our programmers were hard at work upgrading our version of Unreal 3 to a more updated and unified version. With the game playable again in a much higher base resolution to work from, we began to improve assets by hand. If you guys are already lost, that's okay, because you're going to get lost even more. But we're doing this together, so pay close attention. Phase 2, Modernization efforts. Phase 2 was the beginning of what we could consider full-scale development. The art team was now fully on board, and our content creation tools, many of which naturally changed and improved throughout the trilogy, had been stood up, unified, and made to work with more modern content creation programs. Eager to dig in, we start off where we knew the biggest improvements were needed, the original Mass Effect. Some assets, most frequently characters and generic props, were shared between the games, and many had already been improved in a later title or DLC. For those cases, we generally used the improved asset on our base, improved it further, and then ported it across the whole trilogy. This resulted in more consistent and higher quality assets, but we had to carefully ensure this process didn't flatten the sense of the passage of time in the overall narrative. For characters who appeared in all 3 games like Liara, Garrus, Kaidan, Captain Anderson, and more, we maintained slight changes throughout the trilogy as they aged, matured, or got hit by a rocket. Obviously, we couldn't let uniforms branded with SR2 sneak their way back onto the crew of the Normandy SR1, and we still liked how the Alliance Admiralty uniforms became more militarized and sleek as the trilogy progressed, so we improved each version of these outfits individually. Our character artists worked their way through a prioritized list of hundreds of armors, creatures, characters, guns, and vehicles across the whole trilogy. They would frequently take an asset back to its original high-poly sculpt, focus on achieving a consistent texture resolution and supporting 3D geometry where needed, and fix errors with baked, normal, or texture mapping. Central to our efforts was increasing the sense of realism in the surface response. While the games don't use PBR, physically based rendering, we could still work with the textures and materials to ensure plastics, fabrics, and metals reacted to light in a more convincing way. Similarly, we dedicated a significant amount of time to improve skin, hair, and eye shaders across the trilogy. Our tech animators then reskin, i.e. set each vertex to move properly when attached to an animated skeleton, each improved mesh, and imported it back into each game as needed. The VFX particle effect artists were busy extending the light and smoothness of animations for things like smoke and fire, while also adding more secondary emitters to beef up the overall look of each effect. A fire might now have secondary smoke trails and sparks, explosions fling chunks of rubble, and the muzzle flash on your weapon now subtly illuminates Shepard and their surroundings. New environmental particle effects were added throughout the trilogy to better enhance the mood and a space's sense of life. As many of you have already noticed, we also sharpened up and added secondary elements to the trilogy's iconic horizontal lens flares. Many GUI images also needed extra love and attention. In 4K, smooth flowing lines that once only took up a few hundred pixels on screen now expanded across thousands or tens of thousands of them. We had to completely rebuild many elements from vector images to achieve needed clarity and crispness, while other images could be run through secondary non-automated AI processes to sharpen and clean up artifacts. We also improved all cinematics across the galaxy. Just kidding, across the trilogy. Whenever possible, we completely re-rendered the pre-rendered cutscenes in 4K. When it wasn't possible to recapture, we utilized an AI upscale program in the original uncompressed videos. In both workflows, we tweaked the color correction, added or composited additional details and visual effects, and even smoothed out some edges frame by frame so they didn't feel dated when compared to actual gameplay. Cinematic designers fixed dozens if not hundreds of bugs that occurred in live action cutscenes and conversations. Don't worry though, the "what do you say" head spinning meme still exists if you know how to look for it. During this phase, environment artists completed phases through each level of the trilogy, performing targeted fixes on any asset or location that visually detracted from the overall experience. This included adding props to exceptionally barren areas, remaking low resolution or stretched textures, smoothing out jagged 3D assets, and modernizing shaders on surfaces with poor lighting response. At this point, we also began resolving hundreds of bugs, from minor things like floating assets to major game-breaking collision issues, including a very frequent global issue where players could easily teleport on top of assets and become completely stuck. Our lighting designers followed closely behind the level artists, ensuring that all the beautified environments and characters were always shown in their best well light. Mass Effect's specific lighting styles features high contrast spotlights and a heavy use of complementary colors. That style was refined heavily throughout the trilogy, so we were able to bring many of those improvements back into the first game. We focused on maintaining that high contrast look while adding natural bounce lighting to ensure characters are lit more consistently and beautifully. We made systemic upgrades to shadows and added or improved post-process effects such as screen space, ambient occlusion, anti-aliasing, and bokeh depth of field, increasing the cinematic quality for out-of-focus cameras. We were also able to bring down engine features that existed in Mass Effect 3, such as dynamic volumetrics, to help unify the look of the first two games. Players will have more opportunities to see their improved characters reflected in-game, as the trilogy also includes new real-time reflections, such as on the Normandy's fish tank showed in this awesome video from our friends at IGN. Phase 3. Rebuilding Worlds. In Phase 3, we began looking at opportunities to make broader improvements to levels and features, rather than just updating the individual assets. By this point, we'd mainly improved thousands of assets, but there are still a significant quality jump between the first two games. To guide this effort, we compared the levels we shipped to the original concept art, design intentions, and artistic inspiration. We also took dozens of screenshots of our currently up-res levels and sent them over to Derek Watts, the Mass Effect trilogy's art director, who used them as a base for new concept art paintovers. These broad brush adjustments were much faster to work on in professional photo editing software. Here are some examples. Pharos has a few very visually distinct sections, including the colony and the highway that leads to the Exogeny Corporation building, the aqueducts, and the Thorian layer. The former of these now features stronger smoke and fire effects, more buildings to fill out the skybox, and much more damage and debris to better showcase the attack by the Geth. We also leaned into the visual atmosphere of the creepy dark interiors with directional light shafts guiding players to uncover the mysteries of the Thorian that sounds creepier than ever thanks to its new audio mix. Edmontonians are no stranger to brutalist architecture or the blistering cold, so we've always felt quite at home in Novaria. Lighting was reworked throughout the level, the storm outside was intensified, and we accentuated the differences between the hotel area and the synthetic insights lab to hopefully improve your ability to navigate the mission's early sections. Eden Prime is the first location you land on in Mass Effect. It's described to you as a verdant paradise planet under attack by an unknown alien ship, but the sight that greeted players didn't always align with that image. Luckily, in the Mass Effect 3 From Ashes DLC, which of course included in the Legendary Edition, we'd already revisited Eden Prime, so we could incorporate its overall atmosphere in specific buildings. We moved the sun placement so that the player's path forward is now illuminated by evening light, while the burnt red sky looms behind, punctuated by falling ash and tracer fire. We also improved the planet's surface with additional fire and battle damage, more foliage, and destroyed structures littering the crater Sovereign leaves behind. Numerous quality of life changes and expanded features rolled out in this phase, many of which were detailed in our previous blog, so be sure to check that out. Notable improvements include an updated HUD for the first game and UI consistency improvements across the trilogy, such as tech UI elements appearing in blue and biotic UI elements appearing in purple in the first game. They were originally swapped. The custom character creator has been unified and expanded upon greatly, and some of your favorite casual outfits from Mass Effect 3 are now available in Mass Effect 2 as well. When we started working on the Legendary Edition, we were overcome with a sense of nostalgia and curiosity. We know there's really something special in how the art and narrative work together to create this fully realized universe. To us, there's a sense of soul to these games, and we truly believe we've been able to strike a balance between making meaningful enhancements while retaining the same atmosphere and feel the original releases. The launch is now only a month out, and we can't wait to let you experience these improvements while creating the new Mass Effect memories for yourselves. Until then, good luck, Commander. So there you have it, folks. The visual improvements, graphical updates, changes, and additions to the Mass Effect Legendary Edition. How do we all do after hearing all that technical word salad? Yeah, I know there's a lot to go over. There's a lot to talk about, but we could be here forever. Hence why I did that stream to kind of go in a more deep dive. But as we read through this, there was a lot of changes. You could tell that Bioware was really trying to do their best to retain the visual message and image and game that we fell in love with back in the day. That soul they mentioned. They wanted to retain that soul. They just wanted to modernize it, making it run better for you and look better than ever and play better than ever. And I can appreciate that, and I love how we're getting this information to us. The transparency is there. It's great. And this is stuff that we need to know because as consumers, we're going to be spending $60 on this, and it's great to know all the nitty-gritty stuff. Now, with that said, I'm sure there's a few things that they may have left out, like HDR, which is a big thing that Aaron Yogurt, thanks dude, appreciate that comment in the stream. He asked about HDR. We didn't hear anything about that, but maybe that is something they overlooked or oversighted, and maybe that option will be in the trilogy. We're not entirely sure, but I hope it comes in later articles or news-related topics before this game comes out. Now, guys, like I said, big word salad all around when it comes to Mass Effect technical stuff, but this gives you a good idea on how much work and effort went into this. Now, this was part 2. Part 1 is the combat and gameplay enhancements and improvements that they worked on. This is part 2, the visual improvement side of things, the graphical updates, changes, and additions. Both very important, both two sides of the same coin, of the Mass Effect Bioware coin, and I appreciated everything that they're trying to do to give us a nice update, fresh look on this. And I recommend you guys checking out all the information here yourself with the links down below. And watch the remaster comparison videos and mess with those sliders because they will let you know what you're getting yourself into. Now, with that said, guys, let me ask you this. Are you more excited for this game even more? Or are you feeling somewhat in the middle where you're like, I'm going to still wait till this comes out. I'm not completely convinced. Or you're just not going to, or you're the people that are just not going to be into this and just wait for someone else to play it for you so you can just see yourself or something, you know? Where are you guys standing in line with this now that we have a ton of information about this in the past 2 weeks? It has been awesome to do. And like I said, if you wanted a deep dive approach to this where I do my best to explain a lot of this stuff and people ask the important questions, the stream I did right before this video, the deep dive, is where you should be. Or you can look up other videos that try to explain each graphical visual improvement or anything. Honestly, there is a lot to intake here, and we could be here all day talking about this stuff. So, folks, let me know what you think down in the comments below. I have been your host, NikoTheLegend, also known as the Well-Mannered Teenager, the Snowflake, the Rambling Idiot, and Vigil. I love it. I appreciate it, guys. This has been fun. This has been the more summarized version of the stream I did before this. And like I said, folks, if you like what you saw, feel free to subscribe to NikoTheLegend. I appreciate your company. We're almost at 900 subs. Let's get this up there. Thank you so much. And I will be here, Pathfinders, to give you the latest updates on everything Mass Effect related. The Legendary Edition is upon us. We're 1 month away, and I can't wait.